In the barren deserts of western China, researchers cracked open a 27,000-year-old coffin. Inside lay a man, roughly 45 years old, with blue eyes. Buried alongside him were a harp, a set of horse bridles, and nearly 2 pounds of marijuana that had somehow stayed green for 27 centuries beneath the ground. This tomb belonged to a shaman, and the plant served as a farewell gift. Those who packed him for his final journey made sure he would have plenty of supplies for the afterlife. But this man was far from the first to discover the plant. It all began roughly 12,000 years ago in East Asia, just as humanity was starting to master agriculture. One of the very first crops they chose to actively cultivate was cannabis. Imagine the motivation of an ancient farmer. He found a single crop that could be spun into strong rope, woven into clothes, eaten as food, pressed into oil, and used as medicine. It wasn't just a harvest. It was a literal, all-in-one Swiss Army knife growing straight out of the dirt. One of the earliest written records of cannabis appears in an ancient Chinese text called the Pensao Qing, one of the oldest medical handbooks in the world. Traditionally credited to the legendary Emperor Shen Nung, the book recommended the plant for easing all kinds of ailments, from joint pain to malaria. From China, the crop began spreading along the Silk Road. Alongside silk and spices, merchants carried cannabis. One of those trade routes ran straight through the Pamir Mountains in Central Asia, which is where the oldest evidence of actually smoking the plant was found. At the high-altitude Jazanko Cemetery, archaeologists excavated 8 tombs dating back to roughly 500 BC. There, they found wooden braziers with charred stones used for burning cannabis. Moreover, these weren't wild herbs gathered from a nearby hillside. The plants had a high concentration of psychoactive compounds and were significantly stronger than their wild counterparts. People were consciously selecting a more potent strain. They would heat the stones, place the buds on top, and inhale the smoke together as part of a burial ritual. Effectively, they were hosting massive, smoky sessions at funerals 2,500 years ago. During that same period, the Greek historian Herodotus was traveling through Central Asia when he encountered the nomadic Scythian tribes. The Scythians were legendary warriors, masterful horsemen, and archers who, on top of everything else, really enjoyed these smoke sessions. Herodotus described how they would set up small tents, throw cannabis onto red-hot stones inside, and breathe in the thick smoke. He noted, "It rolls out and gives off so much vapor that no Greek bath could surpass it." The Scythians howled with delight. It seems the historian was even a little jealous of them. For a long time, researchers dismissed this as an exaggeration. But in 1947, Soviet archaeologist Sergei Rudenko excavated frozen tombs in Siberia, which had been locked in permafrost for over 2,000 years, and found the tent frames, charred stones, and cannabis seeds. Herodotus was telling the absolute truth. Later, in 2013, another Scythian burial site was discovered in the Caucasus, containing golden vessels weighing over 7 pounds. An analysis of the residue inside these cups revealed traces of both cannabis and opium. This means ancient warriors were mixing psychoactive substances in solid gold cups 2,400 years ago. An even stranger discovery was made 7 years later in Tel Arad, Israel. Scientists analyzed the altars inside a 2,700-year-old temple from the ancient kingdom of Judah. On one altar, they found traditional frankincense, but on the other, they found cannabis mixed with animal dung to ensure a slow burn and better smoke release. This proves that the priests of that era fully understood the technology behind the process. The plant was revered everywhere because the human body is biologically hardwired to interact with it. Our bodies naturally produce a molecule called anandamide, named after the Sanskrit word for bliss. And cannabis contains a chemical compound that fits perfectly into those exact same receptors, like a spare key to an existing lock. This is precisely why in India the crop wasn't just used, it was worshipped. Their traditions of consumption are among the oldest in the world. In the sacred text Atharva Veda, cannabis is listed as one of the 5 holiest plants. One of the supreme Hindu deities, Shiva, is known as the Lord of Bhang, a drink made from cannabis leaves and milk. According to legend, when Shiva drank a poison that threatened to destroy the world, it was bhang that restored his peace and healed him. This drink is still traditionally prepared during the festivals of Holi and Shivaratri, 3 millennia later. History kept moving forward. In China, around 200 AD, a brilliant physician named Huatuo mixed cannabis with wine and used the concoction as anesthesia during surgeries, 1,800 years before modern anesthesia was invented. However, being ahead of your time has always been dangerous. Huatuo was summoned by Cao Cao, one of the most powerful military warlords in China. Cao Cao suffered from severe migraines, and this doctor was the only one who could relieve his pain. Yet Huatuo wanted to return home to treat ordinary people rather than remain a lifelong servant to a dictator. Cao Cao viewed this as defiance, ordering the doctor's arrest and execution. Before dying in prison, Huatuo tried to pass his medical manuscripts to a guard, but the guard was too terrified and refused. The doctor then burned his own writings, and the unique formula for anesthesia was lost forever. Meanwhile, in Africa, a story unfolded that sounds like pure fiction. A fierce, warring tribe in the Congo discovered cannabis and completely overhauled their entire society. They stopped fighting, ended the violence, rebuilt their community around the plant, and began calling themselves the Benariamba, the sons of hemp, while naming their land Lubuku, which translates to friendship. Even their greeting, Moyo, held a double meaning, cannabis and life, because to them the two concepts had become inseparable. The colonization of the Americas began at a time when cannabis had already been a staple crop in Europe for centuries, serving as the literal backbone of the entire Navy fleet. Hemp fiber was used to manufacture ropes, rigging, and sails. The age of discovery was made possible largely due to the sheer strength and durability of this plant. Therefore, for the first settlers in the New World, growing hemp was not an ideological statement. It was a matter of basic practical necessity, just like planting wheat. The crop quickly spread across the colonies, but a problem arose. Growing tobacco was vastly more profitable, and farmers naturally preferred it. The authorities urged them to increase hemp production, but nobody wanted to work at a financial loss. So the Virginia Assembly shifted from requests to commands, passing a law that mandated farmers to grow the crop under threat of severe penalty. That is how vital it was to the state. For the next 200 years, cannabis remained an ordinary part of American daily life until 1930, when Harry Anslinger took charge of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics. He ran the agency for 32 years and began deliberately associating the plant with African Americans, Mexicans, and Filipinos, claiming that under its influence, minorities forgot their place in society. Anslinger also deeply despised jazz, calling it satanic music, and relentlessly targeted jazz musicians. His personal target became the singer Billie Holiday, not actually because of drugs, but because of her performance of the protest song Strange Fruit, which condemned lynching and infuriated the elite of the time. He intentionally popularized the foreign word marijuana instead of the familiar term cannabis, to make the name sound alien and terrify everyday citizens. Anslinger gathered fabricated police reports, known as the Gore Files, which supposedly proved a link between the plant insanity and extreme violence. When he polled dozens of medical experts, the vast majority assured him that cannabis posed no serious danger. Yet he completely ignored the majority opinion and listened only to the single doctor who supported his position. As a result, the Marijuana Tax Act was passed in 1937. In 1970, Richard Nixon's administration placed the plant on Schedule 1, the most dangerous drug category right alongside heroin. A crop that humanity had been cultivating since before the invention of writing was suddenly outlawed as one of the greatest threats on the planet. Many years later, Nixon's domestic policy advisor, John Ehrlichman, candidly explained the true motives behind this decision in an interview. He admitted that the administration had two main enemies, the anti-war left and black people, and since they couldn't make it illegal to be against the war or black, they criminalized the substances to give them a legal pretext to raid homes, make arrests, and vilify their leaders. This is not a conspiracy theory. It is a direct confession from the man who actively designed the state policy. Humanity has interacted with this plant for 12,000 years, yet it has been banned for barely the last 90 years, which is less than 1% of our entire shared history. For millennia, it was simply an undeniable part of life. You wove ropes from it in the morning and burned it at a funeral ritual in the evening. An entire African tribe rebuilt their society around it, making its name synonymous with life itself. And that ancient shaman in the Chinese desert, who was buried with a harp and 2 pounds of weed, knew absolutely nothing about political bans or government drug schedules. He simply valued the beneficial properties of the plant, and the people who loved him made sure he would never run out on his long journey.